All right, everybody, welcome to the first ever Press X to Lift podcast. Hopefully you can hear me right now. I'm assuming you can. This is going to be a PlayStation-centered podcast, and it's just going to be me. I'm doing a one-person podcast, and the way I see it is I'm hoping you guys can be like the guest, I guess we could say. The live chat is going to play a very big role in this podcast, and it's been something I've been thinking about doing for a while now. A lot of people have also been asking me for quite some time to do something like this, so here we go. The format is going to be pretty simple, honestly. It's going to be me going over some of the big PlayStation topics that have happened throughout the week. It doesn't always have to be just PlayStation. It can be, obviously, other things that are going on within the industry. But there are a few things I want to discuss here. I'm sure some questions that you guys have. The first is the name of the podcast, Press X to Lift. A lot of people ask me, MBG, what does MBG stand for? It stands for Muscle Bound Gamer, and it's because, I don't know, I came up with that name because I like lifting weights, I like working out, and I like gaming, so I thought, hey, Muscle Bound Gamer, MBG for short, and so Press X to Lift podcast made sense in my head, and believe it or not, many of you actually helped me come up with this name because a while ago I actually put out a poll asking you guys to vote on which PlayStation symbol you thought was most synonymous with PlayStation, and the majority of the vote was X. So there we go. Press X to Lift podcast. If triangle or circle or square won that vote, then it would be, a different PlayStation symbol. So hopefully this is something you guys are going to enjoy. If you think you're going to enjoy it, make sure you hit the like button. It's the easiest way for you guys to let me know. And that leads me into the next thing here, where I can't make any promises with this podcast right now because this is the first episode. And so it's essentially going to live or die based off of how much you guys enjoy it. Obviously, it's something I want to do. I think it's something I'm going to enjoy. I want to make it a weekly podcast. I can't lock in a definitive time right now. However, I can say it will most likely be done on Sundays. But at what time I go live on Sundays could vary. Hopefully I can lock that in going forward. And so, like I said, it's going to live or die based on how you guys interact with it, how much you end up enjoying it. I think it'll be good. I know that, a one-man podcast isn't really the most popular thing, but I think we can do it. It's what I feel most comfortable doing. And again, you guys in the chat are going to play a big role here. And so I want to mention Super Chat for just a moment here, and I'm only mentioning this because some people are probably expecting me to answer every single question. Obviously, I'm not going to be able to do that. I'm probably going to get a lot of questions throughout the podcast, and I'm not saying you need to use Super Chat. I'm not saying that. I will do my best as we go forward to answer as many questions as I can. I simply just want it to be known that if you absolutely want me to acknowledge what you're saying and you want me to answer your question, or there's just something you want to say, or if you just want to support the show and support the channel to help me out directly, Super Chat is a great way to do that. I just want to get that out here in the beginning so everybody is aware. But moving on from that, the first thing I want to just go over is what I've been playing. I think that's a normal thing for people to do in podcasts, and so what I've been playing recently is Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. I'm a little bit late to it. That's because I was busy trying to obtain the Platinum for Death Stranding, which was a great thing. It was definitely tedious, but I enjoyed my time with it. And so I moved on to Jedi Fallen Order. And just to speak to that game for a moment, I am enjoying my time with it. I am not as high on it, I think, as many other people are. I feel like the combat is not nearly as good as it could be. It is pretty satisfying, though. It's far from the worst, and a lot of people were comparing it to Dark Souls, and the game is 100% a combination of Uncharted and Dark Souls. It's much more Uncharted than I expected, but it's really good, and the combat, it is very much just I don't know. It feels like it wants to be Dark Souls, but it's very animation heavy. And the thing about Dark Souls and a game like Bloodborne is that with that combat, animations can immediately be interrupted, and it gives this sense of immediacy, right? Like there's just this immediate input. There's no waiting around for anything. And so that's kind of what I was hoping for with Jedi Fallen Order. However, it is very animation heavy. So gameplay-wise, I am enjoying it. It's a good game. I haven't beaten it yet. I'm taking my good old time with it, just like I normally do with the majority of single-player games I play. I'm not sure if I'm going to platinum it yet. I'm going to see. But, yeah, other than that, I've been playing PUBG, which we're not really going to spend any time talking about because it's PUBG. It's just kind of like my go-to multiplayer game when I want to, game with some friends or just play that tactical shooter. So, yeah, that's pretty much what I've been playing. What the game I want to play next, believe it or not, I don't think it's on many people's radar. It's Zombie Army 4. It's actually a continuation to the Zombie Army trilogy, which I played and I really enjoyed it. It's not a very serious game. It's made by the same people who make the Sniper Elite games, but I really enjoyed Zombie Army trilogy, and so I'm looking forward to playing that next. I think it comes out February 4th. It is 4-player co-op, and let's see here. Mr. Hamster, I believe, is what we called you the last time you were you were here. You say, "Yo, MBG, how's 2020 going so far?" Well, first off, thank you for that super chat. And 2020 is actually off to a really good start. The channel here is doing really well, obviously, as a lot of you can see. And I think 2020 is going to be a really big year for PlayStation and its fans. And it's very exciting. It's also why I wanted to start this podcast in 2020, specifically a PlayStation-centric podcast, because there's going to be a lot to talk about throughout the year, and I'm hoping that this can be another way I can interact with my audience and keep it fresh. But to answer your question, yeah, it's going great so far. I hope it's going well for everybody else. But getting back to what I'm looking forward to playing, yeah, Zombie Army 4, I don't know how many of you are excited for that game, but it looks like it's going to be a fun time. And so for those of you who aren't aware of what it is, it's a 4-player co-op zombie game where you make your way through somewhat linear levels, and it's just fun because you just get to kill zombies over and over again, and it has that kind of Call of Duty Zombies type vibe to it. It's based in World War II, so if you haven't checked out the game, be sure to do so. To acknowledge the footage that's in the background, it's just going to be random stuff, PlayStation related or related to whatever topic we're going to be discussing. However, going forward, I'm probably going to actually have some of my own gameplay in the background. At least I'll try to. It'll probably change week over week, but I just wanted to have something in the background for you guys to watch as we converse here. But yeah, so again, before we go any further, hit the like button if you are excited for this podcast. Again, it's going to be really important that you guys do this to show your support, because it's something that I want to succeed. It's something I want to, put a lot of effort into going forward, and the only way I'm going to be able to properly do that is if I feel that people are on board with it and it's something they're looking forward to. So, starting with the topics here. Now, we are going to go over, I think, some of the biggest topics that have come out, I'd say, over the past week. That's kind of how I plan to do this. And so, yeah, before getting into that, Mr. Hamster, let's acknowledge you once again. You say it seems like a weak spring this year, not many big releases, a ton of games got delayed. Yeah, it is interesting to see how many games got delayed. I think we know that Final Fantasy VII got delayed, but that's not really a big deal. It was delayed by a month. I don't think anybody's too upset over that. But yeah, games like Cyberpunk, like we're going to talk about a little bit later, Dying Light got delayed indefinitely, which was pretty strange. The indefinitely part is what makes it so strange. And then also the Avengers game. So September looks like it's going to be packed. And so something I want to mention here, because you brought up the delays, is I have to wonder what Sony is planning to do with Ghost of Tsushima, because I have a pretty good feeling that they were planning on releasing Ghost of Tsushima in September, because that is still summer. And now you have not only Avengers in September, because even though a lot of people are pretty down on Avengers, it's still the Avengers. It's going to be a big game to compete with, that brand recognition. Now you also have Cyberpunk 2077, which is an absolute juggernaut of a game. So all I can say to that is I hope Sony planned on releasing Ghost of Tsushima before September, or at the very least before September 17th, because that's going to be a bad time to release a new IP if I'm being completely honest. But moving on, starting with the first topic here, the first thing I really want to focus on and talk about is the general hype that is currently being built around the PlayStation 5 and the PlayStation 5 reveal event specifically, because the thing that I've been thinking about, the thing I've been noticing is how Sony seemingly needs to do very little to generate an incredible amount of hype and excitement. And so I'm looking around the internet and I'm seeing all of the leaks, all of the rumors, all of the wishful thinking, and just the general excitement. It's already through the roof. And there can be a downside to this potentially. It's, brings up the question, well, with all of this hype, with how excited people are right now for the PlayStation 5, is Sony going to be able to fully and truly deliver on what it is that they are going to be showing and what people are expecting? And I can't answer that, obviously. I don't know what Sony's plans are. What I do know and what I can say for sure is that they do have big plans, but it's just crazy to me, honestly, that we are at a time where right now Microsoft has essentially revealed everything, not everything, but a pretty good chunk, a lot more than Sony has. And there's no doubt that Microsoft has generated a significant amount of hype with the Xbox Series and with showing off Hellblade. And apparently they showed off a new game from, I don't even remember the name of it, honestly, but they just randomly, a random day throughout the week, they just are like, here's another project that that the Hellblade team, Ninja Theory, is working on. And it looks like it's grounded in reality. It also, I think it stars the same woman who is playing Senua, and it's basically her in real life, I guess. I don't really know. Yeah, Project Mara, that's what it's called. And so it is going to be interesting to see more about that. I don't think it's going to be a big thing, but it seems like Ninja Theory is a studio. They are stretching themselves pretty thin, working on 3 different projects. But getting back to the PlayStation 5 hype. I just think that once Sony does announce this reveal event, that is going to be the moment the hype train leaves the station. And when that happens, I don't think there's going to be anything that's going to slow it down. I think the only thing that could slow it down is Sony themselves if they make any type of mistake or bad announcements or anything like that, anything that doesn't really serve to actually get people genuinely excited and hyped, or if, people go in with certain expectations. I will admit we've been doing a pretty good job here on the channel of building things up, building the hype and excitement up. But I just have this feeling that Sony is being silent for a reason. And I think the reason they're being so silent is because they know they have so much to show, so much to talk about, that in order to make sure that everything hits the way they expect it to hit, everything lands the way they expect it to land, they're going to have to be silent. They've been silent for a long time, and they haven't had any big events for like over a year now, and they know that fans are going a little bit stir crazy right now. And so I feel like this is actually working for them, because I feel like at this point, Sony could literally talk about anything relating to the PlayStation 5, and people are just going to go nuts over it. And so it's created this interesting dynamic right now where you have Microsoft on one side where, in my opinion, Microsoft absolutely needs to push to build for as much hype as they possibly can. I don't really see how else they could, get people excited without coming out here and showing people and be like, look, listen, we lost a lot of goodwill this generation. Coming off of the 360, going into the Xbox One, we need to do some big things and make some big moves and make some big announcements. And so I have actually been seeing some rumors and leaks pop up where people are talking about just how big Microsoft's E3 conference is going to be this year. And we know that Sony's not going to be there. And I've been hearing people say that it's essentially going to be Microsoft revealing everything they've been saving for the past couple years. And to be honest, I hope that is the truth. And to be frank, I think that is exactly what Microsoft is going to have to do. And I hope they have things ready, like big things, to compete with Sony, because people always get on my case. They're like, MBG, you're just an Xbox hater. You're always just talking trash on Xbox and all this stuff. But I don't think they understand fully that I am somebody who just wants to see Microsoft compete. Obviously, I'm more of a PlayStation fan than anything else now. They've truly won me over. And no matter what Microsoft does, I'm frankly always going to be more excited for what PlayStation has to offer. But it doesn't mean I'm not paying attention to Microsoft and Xbox. In fact, it means I just want them to do better. I want to see them compete on a more intense level. Unfortunately, I think it was Xbox's Matt Booty who went on record recently saying that they're not trying to compete directly with Sony, Xbox that is, and to me that's a little bit unfortunate. I feel like that's not being 100% truthful. I mean, you guys are making a brand new cutting-edge console. You're going to be releasing it at the end of this year. I feel like you have to compete to some capacity with Sony. Like, you don't really have much of a choice. So I guess in my mind, I'm just hoping that Microsoft is able to keep up with Sony. That's all it comes down to, because looking at the hype that Sony is currently generating, it's on another level. And it really just makes me wonder what exactly is going to happen once Sony does come out and give us that big information that everybody's been waiting for. I mean, people are going absolutely insane over here. People are literally taking time out of their lives to write full-blown, like, essay-level, articles or posts of just things that, inside information they know, and we've been going over that here on the channel, but we all know realistically that it's just most people don't have that amount of information, and if they did, they're certainly not. I mean, you would think that it was Jim Ryan out here, posting this stuff and, letting everybody know, like, hey, this is exactly what's going to happen. But yeah, that's the first thing I just wanted to discuss here. And it seems that based off of what a lot of my audience is saying here, I think a lot of you agree that the hype levels that they're able to achieve without, doing much, it is, I think most of you agree it's on another level. So, all right, let me look at the chat here for a little bit. You're saying they're not trying to compete is just a roundabout way of saying they can't compete. Yeah, Killer Dude, I think you may be right about that, because we know that Microsoft has kind of taken this new approach the past couple of years where they're just like, hey, we're just trying to be the good guys here. As of now, Sony needs to keep pace with Microsoft. I don't know about that. I could understand why you think that, but I don't know about that. Failed Pyromancer, keep up the good work, MBG. Honest opinion should always be taken in like constructive criticism. Keep doing you. Well, thanks. I appreciate that donation, and I agree. I am absolutely not opposed to constructive criticism. In fact, I think it's important that the audience keeps me honest and lets me know what they like, lets me know what they don't like. And of course, I have numbers to refer to, analytics that can help me with that. But I appreciate that. I will keep doing me. But to go back to what that one person said, saying that they believe that Sony needs to keep pace with Microsoft now, I can understand why you have that mentality, because the truth is, Microsoft they're going in pretty hard, and they're being pretty aggressive to much more than seemingly Sony is right now. And I emphasize the word right now because people who think that Sony is just going to be playing it passive and they don't have some big things planned for 2020, trust me, they do. But I feel like I don't know if Microsoft is being so much aggressive as they're just trying to be strategic with their timing. I think Microsoft is trying to catch people off guard and surprise people, but they're also trying to do it at times where they know Sony is not going to be directly pushing against them and fighting for that space. And so Yeah, I do agree that Sony's going to have to make sure, considering how silent they've been for how long they've been silent, they're going to have to make sure that whatever they do show, whatever they do announce, it's going to have to be pretty significant. They can't just like show one or two things at an event and be like, okay, I hope you guys are happy now. They're going to have to show a lot, and you have to imagine with all this time that has passed that they've been saving a lot, just like possibly Microsoft has. So I see somebody brings up Google Stadia. I'm not planning on talking about Google Stadia today in this podcast, but I think it's safe to say that whatever fear Sony had with Google Stadia, yeah, I don't think I don't think there's anything to fear. I do want to mention real quick though, since you did bring up Stadia, I read recently or like a week ago or something. I was thinking about making a video covering it, but I'm like, man, I'm not going to bother. But they talked about how they're willing to pay up to 10 publishers for exclusive games. We're talking about like third-party exclusives here, and I'm just like, you got to be kidding me. Like, I know they're desperate, but come on, that's not good. That is not good for anybody. And considering how, yeah, as you know, you say here, Stadia's DOA, yeah, I'm not seeing it. So, somebody says here, Jamie, you say stop calling it a podcast. Why should I stop calling it a podcast, though? I mean, it's a one-man podcast. It's a show. I don't know what else to call it. Am I supposed to call it? MBG talk show? I mean, I guess I could call it that, but I feel like podcast is a loose term. Needs a partner for the podcast. Well, maybe. I mean, hey, I'm not saying that there won't ever be somebody else on the podcast. I'm just saying that this is how it's starting. Like, this is the main podcast, but I could very well have people on in the future. We're going to have to see about that. See, people don't realize that a podcast, you don't have to have another person. There are such things as a one-person podcast. And so the way I see it right now, you guys are the guest. You know, the chat, the live chat is the guest on the podcast, I guess. So, but I mean, you guys have to understand, I'm calling it a podcast because that's just what people expect. Also, podcasts usually deal with like niche, however you say it, topics. And while I don't want to make it sound like PlayStation is small or talking about PlayStation is a small thing, it's not. But I mean, it's very focused, and it's a very focused show. So therefore, I think it is justified calling it a podcast. But let's see here. You say Colin used to do his podcast solo and later added Chris. Yeah, I really enjoy Colin Moriarty's Sacred Symbols podcast. I have to admit, he was a pretty big inspiration for me wanting to do this. And, it's just proof that people can do things the way they see fit, what they're most comfortable with. And, the audience will respond appropriately. And I'm hoping you guys do enjoy this. I would like to do this podcast on a weekly basis. That's my plan. It's just a matter of, I don't want it to conflict with my regular content either. So as of right now, I'm going to attempt to do it on a weekly basis. And as I said earlier, I can't commit to a specific time yet. However, it will be done on Sundays. And so I will let you guys know ahead of time through my regular content videos or through posts on the community section or on my Twitter, which will be linked in the description if you want to follow me there, when the podcasts will be happening. So I love the game Coffee Talk. Call it a MyCast. No cult or dealer. Hit the Rogans up. Yeah. Do a face reveal. A lot of people are asking for a face reveal. I'm thinking maybe when I hit 100K, we'll do a face reveal. I don't know. I don't want to commit to anything yet, but, I have to build it up, obviously, if that's going to be something we do in the future. But moving on to the second topic here that I think a lot of you are going to be interested in, because I've seen a lot of people talking about this. It has to do with the fake, at least in my opinion, it's clearly fake, but I think it was all revealed today it was fake, that PlayStation 5 leak where somebody put out a video of the PlayStation 5 console, which looked way smaller than it'll probably actually end up being, and people were thinking this might be an updated dev kit, and it showed the start screen. And a lot of people were actually convinced that this was the real deal. I, however, was extremely skeptical. That's why I didn't talk about it. Gideon, you say, Kid Smooth is watching. He will tweet about you. Maybe. I don't know. There's a lot of people I block just because it seems like anytime they interact with me, they just either are saying negative things or they're pushing against me, and it's just like I don't have time to deal with that. Like, I appreciate constructive criticism, but I am who I am, and there's going to be things I talk about that people don't like, and so it is what it is. People can say and do what they want. But talking about this leak, I don't know. I think most of you know what I'm talking about. You can find it. It's like a video that has come out where it's like, hey, look, this is the PlayStation 5 startup screen. And it just, something that, the box, that wasn't the PlayStation 5. I don't know how anybody can see that and believe it was a PS5, but I think it came out today that the person who made it confirmed it was fake, it was not real, and that they pretty much are going to come out here and talk about how they came up with it. Because I have to admit, it was pretty well done. Like, even though it seemed extremely fake to me, it definitely wasn't something that seemed real. It was a convincing one, but I don't know. But I don't believe it's one of these situations where people are going to be doing a lot of things until Sony comes out here and reveals the official information themselves. They are going to be coming up with, hoaxes and fake leaks and all this stuff, and you got to try to use your head to figure out what is believable, what seems realistic, what seems plausible. And that's what I've been trying to do. I mean, obviously there's a lot of things we go over that most of it's probably not going to turn out to be real, but at the same time, we have to consider some of these things. And that specific leak I'm referring to, where it showed the PlayStation 5 in the startup screen, I will admit the mock startup screen looked pretty convincing, but I think at the bottom left you saw there it said like Google Play or something, just something really random. It was really bizarre, and I think some people were pointing out that you could see the words Toshiba on the so-called PlayStation 5 console, which was kind of funny to me. But yeah, they've already talked about it on SpawnWave. Yeah, I saw that too. I follow SpawnWave. He's pretty cool. I enjoy his content. But yeah, you say you always enjoy my updates and news on the PS5. Thank you. I appreciate anybody who enjoys the content. It really goes a long way. I see Foxy Games in the chat here. What's going on, man? Appreciate you checking it out. Checking the first ever podcast out, solo podcast. I say MBG, it's great. Please keep doing this. Yeah, I would love to. Again, I would love to keep doing this. It's going to be up to my audience to determine the success rate of it. But C1 King says, do you have the back button attachment? Actually, I do not. I have not picked up the back button attachment. I probably should. I've been hearing really good things about it, and I would like to give it a try, but I haven't picked it up yet. If anybody in the chat has picked it up and you've been using it, let me know your thoughts on it. Joshua says, I am an Xbox fan, yet here I am. Well, I mean, hey, the podcast is welcome to anybody. You don't necessarily, it is a PlayStation themed podcast. Doesn't necessarily mean you have to, it has to be your favorite platform. But, let's see. Please come to Twitch. I don't think so. I'm probably going to stick here on YouTube. I like YouTube. YouTube's pretty good. Sorry for the hate you get, MVG. You don't have to be sorry for it. I mean, it's natural, I'm a content creator and I have some strong opinions, so it's natural that I'm going to get some hate. Here's the thing. I can admit that there are times where I seem hypocritical, and oftentimes I try to keep myself honest in that way, and I will admit when I'm being hypocritical about something. But at the same time, I feel like, realistically speaking, for those who are adults, I think we all have to realize that everybody has a tendency at certain times to be hypocritical. Hypocrisy is part of human nature, but it's our duty, I'd say, to always try to watch yourself and keep yourself as honest as you can. And there's nothing wrong with admitting when you're wrong. I think the real problem comes when people are not willing to admit when they're wrong. But moving on from that here, because we do have a few more topics I would like to discuss. By the way, for those wondering at the end, if there's enough time, again, I'm still going to be messing with the format going forward. Depending on, I don't want the podcast to run too long, but if we have some time at the end, I will try to just purely focus on the chat and not necessarily any of the topics. But Mr. Twister asks, what studios would you like to see Sony acquire? That's a good question. I mean, there's a lot. The ones I would like to see, probably, I would like to see Remedy simply because I really enjoyed Control. And when I played Control, something about it was like, this is a single-player, story-driven game, and the gameplay was amazing. I feel like it was a really underrated game. And so I would love to see Remedy acquired because I just feel like they're a perfect fit for the type of games they like to make, and they would fit in really well with Sony. And the interesting thing about their games is they always have a unique, I think, spin to them, a unique twist of some sort. And I think that a lot of Sony's games and their studios, they're pretty straightforward. Not all of them, but I don't know. I think Remedy, out of all the studios, I would like to see because I just really enjoyed Control, and I think that they have a lot of potential, and it's tough to see that like they're an independent studio and they have some struggle because of that, and you can tell like they're always kind of, needing to stay afloat, and I think if they were to be acquired by Sony, they could just kind of fulfill their full potential. But yeah, other than that, I would love to see Kojima Productions. I'm a huge Kojima fan. I loved Death Stranding, and I think that having that type of uniqueness under your first party would really go a long way. But yeah, I do think that Sony probably acquired Housemarque, though. If I had to guess at which studio they for sure bought, either Housemarque or Bluepoint. But Remedy and Kojima for me. I see somebody bringing up Platinum Games. I don't think that's going to happen. I notice a lot of people do bring up Kojima Productions. Remedy would just be adding another third-person single-player studio. Sony has enough of those. Yeah, I do agree with that, but if you play Control, though, like, it controls like nothing I played before. It's so good. Like, yeah, appreciate that, Foxy. If you guys could hit the like button, it really helps the video or the stream out. But moving on to the next topic here, and this is, I think, going to be the main topic because this is the topic that I discussed this past week that has brought up the most controversy, and it seems like the most people, I got the most pushback on this. However, a lot of people did agree with me, but I talked about Cyberpunk 2077 and the delay. Now, obviously, the footage that's playing in the background right now is Final Fantasy VII Remake. I did already cycle through the Cyberpunk footage. I probably should have put that for later. But this, in my opinion, is, I don't want to say a big deal. Because I don't think it's a big deal. However, I do think people are misunderstanding and misinterpreting what it is that I try to communicate when talking about this. But Shot by Rallo says, you should start a PlayStation-focused Discord server. Yeah, maybe that's something I can consider. I don't really use Discord, so that's why it's really never been on my mind, but I will take that into consideration, and maybe that's something we can do in the future. But talking about Cyberpunk 2077, what I tried to convey, right, is that Cyberpunk 2077 being delayed, and then the information coming out that the reason for its delay was because of potentially the base model Xbox One or even the PS4. Okay, so there's a couple super chats coming in here, and so let me acknowledge these real quick. I appreciate a lot, guys. Eddie Lopez says Bluepoint should create a new IP. I agree. I think that I don't know, because they have so much talent and they're so good at remaking games, and we know Sony has such a back catalog of games that could, be great for the remake treatment. I do agree, though. I would like to see a studio like Bluepoint really flesh out their full potential by seeing something new, but we're going to have to wait to see if that ever happens. Let's see here. A Matador 809, send invite to Foxy to this podcast. Great guy. Yeah, maybe we could do that in the future. We'll see about that. I'm not opposed to having people on. I don't know yet, though, because I'm just so comfortable speaking alone. I feel like suddenly adding another person would just make me so nervous and make me feel so different. I don't know, though. Maybe that would go a long way for the podcast. But I'm open to things in the future for sure. TX Gamer 7 say it's off topic a little, but have you? Would you ever have Rich of Review Tech USA and Foxy Games UK as a guest on your podcast? Personally, I think It'll be an interesting table talk. Yeah, I mean, again, like, I'm open to exploring different avenues in the future and possibly having some guests on. I like both of those individuals. I watch their content and I enjoy it, and I respect them. So, yeah, I think that maybe that could work in the future. We'll have to see about that. Let's see here. V Not is what I'm going to call you. Will the Cyberpunk delay, is it going to give The Last of Us 2 traction? I think it will. I think the less that is surrounding The Last of Us 2 when it comes out within that time frame, I think the better it's ultimately going to be for The Last of Us 2. I think it just makes sense because, the more of the spotlight that The Last of Us 2 gets, the better it's going to be. So yeah, I think it will. And James C. says, I know you like action RPGs. What do you think about Maneater from Tripwire? Well, to be completely honest with you, I've never heard of that game. So if you're saying it's an action RPG, I will actually look into it, and maybe on the next podcast you can remind me about it, and I'll give you my thoughts on it. But yeah, it's a game I'm not familiar with, Maneater. I honestly never even heard of it, so I will look into it. So I appreciate that. But let's see here. Getting back to the topic, Cyberpunk 2077 being delayed. I kind of pointed out here, and real quick, Chris B, you say you love the content. Appreciate that. I just want it to be known that anybody who has anything positive to say and you let me know you appreciate the content, it does not go unnoticed, and it really does go a long way. It really means a lot to me because I do put a lot of time into this, and I care about the channel, and I care about my audience and the community here, and so I just want it to be known that I appreciate all of the kind words that you guys have to share. But Cyberpunk 2077, I tried to communicate that I think Cyberpunk 2077 being delayed, and apparently the reasoning for that delay is because it's they're having a hard time fully optimizing it for the Xbox One, specifically the base model. And here's the thing, a lot of people pushed back on me because they're like, no, you need to say the Xbox One and the PS4. But the truth is, the Xbox One is the weakest console. I mean, I'm sure they're having a struggle with the base model PS4 as well, right? I mean, this is old hardware, but there's no doubt in my mind they are having probably a much more difficult time with that VCR base model Xbox One and even the Xbox One S. And what I tried to point out is that this is exactly why I think Microsoft is potentially making a mistake by saying, look, we want all of our games to be made, all of their first-party games to be made for the Xbox One as well as the Xbox Series consoles, because I just think that it's ultimately going to hold them back. And people constantly push back on me and they say, MBG, you don't know what you're talking about. It's all about scalability. But here's what people need to understand is looking at Cyberpunk 2077, it is a great example of how sometimes it's not all just about scalability. Even John Linneman from Digital Foundry spoke to this for a little bit, and he was explaining that it's not necessarily just about optimizing in terms of like making it look good, right, or helping it run at a better frame rate. It actually comes down to just things that just simply can't be done with older hardware, with these very limiting CPUs, with less RAM, to the point where you can only, and I'm only assuming here, but developers can only find so many workarounds, right, to the point where it's like, okay, the only way we're going to get this to work at this point, and when I say this, I am not just talking about the Xbox One, I'm also talking about the base model PS4. The only way we can get this to work and function properly on these consoles is we have to essentially dumb it down or just straight up remove it. Because when you're talking about like AI, you're talking about just like base level development. And here's the truth, right? Like it seems to me like CD Projekt Red started development on Cyberpunk 2077 with high-end PC hardware, and I think that's how a lot of game development starts. And I think that they just, they were trying to like say, look, we have this massive ambition. This is what we want to achieve with this game. We have a massive scope in mind, and it's going to be bigger and better than anything ever before. And then they just, went full steam ahead with it, and here we are, and they're like starting to maybe realize that, okay, like, we definitely developed this game with the base model consoles in mind, but we are having a much harder time than we expected actually being able to get this thing running on these base model consoles. And it does make you question, like, how much is going to have to be scaled back. And Mr. Hamster, you say, gotta go to bed, keep fighting, MBG. All right, well, you sleep well. I appreciate you showing up, and I appreciate all the support here. I'll catch you hopefully on the next podcast. But, you know, you have to ask yourself how much is going to have to be dumbed down, removed, you know? And people point out, they're like, oh, well, that's not fair. Look at The Witcher 3 running on the Switch. But The Witcher 3 was made many years ago, okay? And that's like basically saying that the size, scale, and scope of what CD Projekt Red is trying to achieve with Cyberpunk 2077 is on the same level, on the equal, you know, playing field as what they achieved with The Witcher 3. But that doesn't make sense because this is CD Projekt Red we're talking about, and we know that their goal in mind is we want to do better than what we did previously. We want it to be bigger. We want it to be better. This is what pretty much every developer who's passionate, this is what they have in mind when they think about their next project. You make something that's really great, and for the time it was, you know, above everything else. The next thing you make, you want to surpass that. And so in my mind, I don't view Cyberpunk 2077 as a game that's on the same level as The Witcher 3. I like to imagine that CD Projekt Red is striving for something higher than that. And while they could maybe get The Witcher 3 running on the base model consoles no issue, and then even get it over to the Switch, I promise you're not going to see Cyberpunk 2077 on the Switch. And that, to me, is proof right there that, you know, they're doing things that just simply can't be achieved on lesser hardware once it hits a certain threshold. But what does this mean in terms of PlayStation and the PS5? Well, it's because, like I've been trying to say for quite some time now, exclusive games, guys. Okay, this is why PlayStation fans are so excited at the idea of PlayStation 5 only exclusive games, because that's what's ultimately going to, in my opinion, differentiate the PlayStation 5 hardware from everything else. It's also why I think, again, Microsoft is making a mistake, because they're just like, look, we want all our games to be made for the base model console and be cross-gen for the first 1 to 2 years. Well, it makes me question, what about developers who want to go beyond that? What about developers who want to make a game that's like, listen, this game, it just simply can't be made on, it can't be played, it can't run on older hardware. You know what I mean? And so, Spider-Man, you say, what if CD Projekt or Cyberpunk 2077 was moved closer to next gen, so when next gen comes out, it will be exclusive to the Xbox Series, so the relationship with Microsoft, enjoy your content. So I assume what you're trying to say here is, like, basically they delay the game to the, if I'm reading this right, they delay the game to the point where, you know, it's going to come out at around the same time or a little bit after next gen has been out. And this brings up the other aspect I want to discuss real quick. I'll answer your question here, Mr. Twister. Which one did you like more, Days Gone or Death Stranding? Honestly, I like Death Stranding more. I love Days Gone, but Death Stranding, it had this certain flow to it when I was playing it that it just got me in a certain mindset and zone that, thinking about all the games I played in 2019, there hasn't been a game that's achieved that same feeling for me. So, Death Stranding. But I want to mention Cory Barlog here, because a lot of people were pushing back on me and they're saying, you're completely wrong, MBG. Look at what Cory Barlog had to say. And so I went and I checked out his tweet in response to this, and he actually had a whole thread. And I think this is where I realized people misunderstood what I was trying to say and what I was talking about. Cory Barlog was basically just saying that, yeah, CD Projekt Red is probably having a hard time right now developing or getting Cyberpunk to run properly on the current consoles because it just needs further optimization. And he was highlighting that this is pretty much what happens with all games. They're ugly until they're not. And somebody brought up the question to him. They said, well, why doesn't CD Projekt Red just decide to make it a next-gen only game, you know? And he basically said that there's a lot of implications with doing that, like multi-year things. And the idea is they want to maximize profit here. They want to maximize sales, and the only way they're going to be able to do that is by making sure they can get this game out on current gen hardware. And so my problem isn't with CD Projekt Red. My problem isn't with the fact that they want this game to potentially end up being a cross-gen game. We have to imagine it's going to come to the next generation consoles. They'd be crazy not to. But I have to imagine that they just, they want to. They're not trying to sell a console. You know what I'm saying? They're just trying to sell as many copies of their game as they possibly can. And so I understand where Cory Barlog's coming from, where he's not wrong. Like, yeah, a lot of games come together at the last moment, and I'm sure CD Projekt Red is going to find a way to get these games working, to get this game working on these consoles, and we're just going to have to see what the end result ends up being. But my problem really lies in the fact that people are not understanding this proves the importance of exclusive games, for the PlayStation 5. And Arian87, hopefully I'm saying your name right, you're a new member. I appreciate that. I appreciate you choosing to support me and the channel and the content directly. It goes a long way. And so I have to look at Sony and the fact that they're going to, more than likely with many of their bigger titles, their single-player titles, they're not going to be cross-gen. At least we can assume. I mean, they pretty much made it clear that they aren't going to be cross-gen. And so I have to think to myself, this is a situation where I think Sony is going to show you, at least some of their studios are going to show why some games are going to be better off not being cross-gen. Because when you see a studio, let's just say Guerrilla Games working on Horizon 2, right? Let's just talk, let's stick with Horizon 2 because it's an open world game, and look, it's coming up on screen here for a moment. Imagine if they had to make Horizon 2 with the PS4 in mind. Now, I mentioned Horizon 2 specifically because I believe it's known at this point that one of the things Guerrilla Games wanted to implement into Horizon Zero Dawn was the ability of flight, to be able to fly on these machines around the world, but they found that anytime they tried to implement that, they were limited, I believe, by the RAM or the CPU or something along those lines, some component inside of the PlayStation 4 that made it so it's just they're not going to be able to do it. And so that was something from a base level, a game design level, they had to say, we can't do this because we are limited by the hardware. Now take a second to imagine if when they while they're making Horizon 2 right now, they had to say, we still can't implement flight because we still have to make our game for the base model PS4. Something tells me they're not going to have to say that. Instead, what they're going to be able to do is look at the PlayStation 5, look at the hardware that's in there. It's going to be incredibly powerful, immensely more powerful than what's in the base model PS4, and they're going to be able to achieve things with Horizon 2 that they just simply would not be able to achieve on the base model PS4. And that same sentiment can go for every Sony studio. But again, it does come down to developers. It's up to the developers to decide how, from a base level, how big do we want our game to be. And frankly, I would love to see a situation where more developers than not are choosing to just utilize next-gen hardware and say, look, we don't want to be held back by making our games cross-gen. And so, the question then comes to how many Sony studios are going to truly utilize the full power of the PlayStation 5 for their games, for the exclusives, versus how many are not. And better question is, how is it going to look in comparison to some of the games that Microsoft ends up putting out within the first year of the Xbox Series being on the market, or the first 2 years? And something tells me, and I could be wrong, but I'm just going to make an assumption, you're going to see a big difference between some of those games. And I think that Sony studios, knowing the talent they have within a lot of their studios, they're going to try to do things that just literally are going to blow people away. Like, okay, this is next gen. This is what we've been waiting for. They're doing things that we've never seen before. That's my hope anyway. And so that's why I wanted to have this conversation about Cyberpunk 2077, because I think a lot of people are, they're missing the bigger point I'm trying to make here. Cyberpunk 2077, I have no problem that CD Projekt Red, they want to do their thing, put it on current-gen consoles, but my only problem lies in the fact that it goes to show just how limiting this older hardware can be. But let's see what some of you are saying here. Say King Don, what's your top 3 most anticipated games and why? Well, it's kind of on the spot here, but I'll do my best. The first, number 1, is The Last of Us Part 2, and I think you know why. I think that game's going to be truly special. Number 2 is probably, believe it or not, Elden Ring. I really want to know more about that game. I don't talk about it very much because we haven't heard pretty much anything about it, but I honestly can't wait for Elden Ring. And number 3 is probably going to have to be a launch title for PS5, any launch title. I say it's my most anticipated because I want to say the first truly PlayStation 5 exclusive game. Not Godfall, because that's also releasing on PC, but I'm talking like internally built from like a bigger team, something that's more single player, or, maybe Guerrilla Games, their second team, what they're working on. I say this because I want to see what a Sony studio can do with the PlayStation 5, and maybe that's a little bit of a cop-out answer, but Arian87, you say Review Tech USA said the PlayStation 5 said the SSD needs to be at least 2 terabytes, but everyone is forgetting that Sony said that lots of data is duplicated and hence games can be smaller and more space efficient. Thoughts? Well, I think we've been kind of conditioned this generation because we're using, regular mechanical hard drives, and some games have just gotten so bloated. I think we've been conditioned to assume that, we do need more space. But what you're saying could end up being true, where developers and studios, they can find a way to just make their games not take up as much space. It's, more optimized, and it's going to vary. We don't know yet, so it's hard to say. I will say that if Sony, I'm just going to say this, I think Sony's going to have a 1 terabyte SSD. I don't see it being higher than that, because we have to understand that if this console is going to be as powerful as we're expecting, and it's going to be as cutting edge as a lot of people are hoping it to be, because I know a lot of PlayStation fans are like, we want a $500 monster console, and we are willing to pay for that. Well, in order for Sony to make that happen and still have, all of this tech in there and make it affordable at $500 without, taking a huge loss, because they're not going to take that big of a loss. They've done it before. I don't think they're going to, though. They're going to be careful. I think that they're going to have to stick with the 1 terabyte, but we're going to have to see if what they're saying is true, where they actually, bring it down and make the file sizes take up less space. We're going to have to see about that. Ron, you say this podcast is dope. Foxy Games says, comment on the rumor there won't be a PlayStation 5 February reveal because back compat is not ready. I haven't heard that rumor, actually, but if there are some rumors going around about that, by the way, I just want to acknowledge here, I do have PT footage in the background, because at some point in this podcast, I wanted to take a moment to talk about the upcoming PlayStation 5 new horror IP, apparently. But, yeah, that rumor, I don't know if there's any truth to that, but I could see that being a reality. I could see, it sounds somewhat plausible to me. It's just, the only thing is, it makes me wonder what exactly, it's all over Twitter. I haven't checked Twitter in a little while here. Maybe I should. If that is the case, then, I don't know if this is like a big story that's coming out right now, and I missed it maybe because I'm doing the podcast live. But I will say this. I think it would make sense, only because if Sony really is trying to strive for full backwards compatibility with the PlayStation 5, we know that it's probably not it's not an easy undertaking, and it really depends on how they want to implement it. If they want to do it to the point where you can take a PlayStation 3 disc and put it inside of your PlayStation 5 and it'll just work, then that tells me they have a lot riding on it, and there's probably a lot of complications they're running into. And I don't know, them delaying their biggest event for something like that, I think it would be justified. So if they were striving for a February reveal, but they're talking and they're in their meetings, they're like, look, we're close to having this ready, but there's some things we have to work out first before we can officially confirm it, and we hope to have them worked out within the next 2 to 3 months, give or take. That is a big enough reveal that Sony would certainly, I think that it would justify them delaying it. Now, it would cause some serious issues because people would be going crazy, being like, what? Like, we all expected a PS5 event. The silence is deafening. We're losing our minds here. But it's all a matter of risk reward. It would be risky for Sony to delay that for that reason, but the reward would be just like overwhelming. You know, if they just decided like, you know what, we're gonna delay it because we want to make sure we have this announcement alongside the PS5. It's absolutely critical. I think it would be justified. I think if we found out that this event wasn't going to be till like April or something, or May, right? I think people would be mad, but if that's what we got in return, nobody's going to be mad. I promise you that. Nobody's going to be mad. And so we do have to take into consideration that Sony is not attending E3 this year, and I don't think they're ever going to attend E3 again. Maybe it would make more sense for them to steal Microsoft's thunder by doing an event closer to E3, having the PS5 reveal be closer to E3, maybe sometime in May. So I think it is a possibility. I have to look more into it again. You're saying this is all over Twitter, and currently I can't really engage with Twitter too much because obviously I'm doing this podcast and I don't want to be rude that way. But I will say this: if that is a real thing, I think it would be a justifiable reason for it to happen. Gamers are getting fatigued with hype. SIE needs to do something. At least another Wired article. LOL. Yeah, no, I agree. I do agree. I think that it's like the momentum is here, but the momentum will rapidly die out if it's just nothing but rumors and nothing but leaks and nothing of actual substance. I do believe that something of substance will have to come out, and maybe this is where Sony may have to call an audible, and be like, okay, we're going to have to trickle out just a little bit more info, the bare minimum of what we can, and maybe they could tease something like that. I mean, if they did like a Wired article and they teased that, like, we are planning on doing backward compatibility that goes beyond PlayStation 4 games, but that's all we want to announce right now. So stay tuned and pay attention to what is coming in the coming months. I think that that's what they could do. This is just me off the top of my head spitballing if this was the case, but yeah, it's exciting times, guys. I hope that we don't have to wait too much longer, but if we do, all I can say is that I have to imagine if Sony's willing to make people wait even longer than they have been, it is for a very good reason, and they wouldn't do it without having a very good reason to do so. So, all right, let me look at the chat here for just a little bit longer before moving on to the last couple topics we have here. I see some people saying they're getting tired of the leaks and the rumors. Yeah, me too. I mean, it makes for great content on my channel. As you guys can see, like, people are very much interested in that. And no problem, Foxy. I do appreciate you have some good questions. I don't mind answering them. I'm getting tired of them too, but a lot of people do like to tune into the videos talking about this stuff because, again, it's one of these situations where people want to know, what is the latest rumor? What is the latest leak? I don't care how outlandish it is. I just want to know, and so that they can kind of choose for themselves to decide, like, do you believe this? Do you not believe this? So, yeah. Did I play Dying Light? You said 2, but 2 isn't out yet. But I did play the original Dying Light. I don't know if I beat it though, but I did enjoy what I played of it. When are we getting the face reveal? I don't know, maybe 100,000 subscribers. If we can get there, maybe that's when we'll do it, but I don't want to make any promises. I'll tell you this, whenever I plan to do a face reveal, I will announce it, and if there's some kind of goal that needs to be achieved, like 100,000 subscribers, I will let you guys know. Right now, I don't want to commit to anything yet, but yeah. 75K, nah, something like a face reveal, that's a big deal. Now, I have had my face on camera a few times before, actually. I just don't know if many people remember. This was like way back when I was not really, there wasn't too much going on my channel. Let me see here. So moving rolling. There's there's almost 800 people watching right now. I'm going to ask you guys, hit the like button. If you could do that, it would really help it out. You guys have no idea how important likes are to the YouTube algorithm. That's why people constantly ask for them, and we wouldn't be asking for them if they didn't mean much. So be sure to hit that like button. I would like to try to get 1,000 likes if it's possible, after the Obviously, we can't do that now. There isn't even 1,000 people watching, but I think you guys get what I'm trying to say. So VNot, that's what I'm just going to call you because I don't know how to pronounce that name, and I don't want to say something that's going to, get me in trouble here with YouTube because you know how they are. When do you think we could see more footage of The Last of Us 2? Because I think that we should see something like in a few weeks from now. That's what I think too. I think one of two things could happen. If there is actually any credence to this rumor about Sony delaying the actual reveal event because they want to get a backwards compatibility locked down. I think what they could do to mitigate that is definitely talk more about The Last of Us, reveal more, because I'll tell you right now, like, for as hyped as people are about the PS5, once they start talking about The Last of Us, which is a game that's coming out before the PlayStation 5 launches, that would mitigate that. I think that would cancel it out, essentially, where it's like, oh man, I want to be so frustrated, but The Last of Us 2 is right in front of me right now, and they're talking about it, and there's more gameplay, and there's all this, so I think you could be onto something. I think regardless, we are going to see more about The Last of Us 2, in the coming weeks, at least for sure the coming months. I mean, there's going to be a big, big, big marketing push for The Last of Us Part 2. We just don't know exactly when it's going to kick off. And we also don't know what role The Last of Us Part 2 is going to play with the PlayStation 5. So, Ron, you say, I saw the face reveal back when he was announcing he was getting a PlayStation. Yeah, I think I did go on, that video is no longer available, but I did go on camera for a little bit. I think it was like an 8-minute video or 11 minutes, something like that. You already did a face reveal. I know, but a lot of people who are currently here were not there back when I did do the face reveal. So, yeah. Anyway, moving on to some of the final topics I want to discuss here. I should have got some water because my throat's getting a little dry here, but we should be okay. So this new horror IP that apparently is in development at Sony. Now, I don't have the individual's name in front of me. Forgive me, but we talked about this in a video where this person is definitely an insider, but they're not really known for gaming stuff. They're known mainly for, I think like TV shows and stuff and comics, stuff like that. And they did emphasize when they tweeted this that they don't normally talk about this stuff, but they did learn that Sony is apparently developing a new horror IP. Now, I originally jumped to the conclusion, because I didn't do enough research on it. Thankfully, a lot of you guys helped enlighten me there. I said, oh, it's clearly Kojima Productions working on a new horror game because we know that Kojima has expressed interest in going back and doing a horror game. But a lot of you were here to remind me, or let me know, actually, the fact that apparently the Gravity Rush team, which I think that's Sony Japan studio. I'm not 100% sure, but the team that made Gravity Rush, apparently the person who is the head of that studio is the creator of Silent Hill. And so I think something else this individual on Twitter mentioned is that the person that Sony is getting to head up this new horror IP, first-party IP, is somebody who's well respected because they've made games in the horror genre before. And so that immediately made me think, that doesn't sound like Kojima. I mean, I think Kojima is respected because of what he was able to show he could do with a game like PT and Silent Hills, but we're talking, like, when you say well respected, like, that's like somebody who has a history, and Kojima's history is with, like, stealth action. So that was interesting to me, and that definitely makes me think that it's seemingly much more likely that it is this individual. I don't know his name off the top of my head, but I think a lot of you know who I'm talking about. He is the individual who created Silent Hill. And I could see that being much more plausible, much more realistic. Tyler, you say, honest thoughts about Demon's Souls Remastered. Well, I don't know if we should call it remastered because I think it's been confirmed that if it is Demon's Souls, Bluepoint confirmed it is a full-blown remake. So it's not a remaster. And so my thoughts on that, honestly, through the roof excited. I know a lot of people, it seems to me like the hype isn't really there yet. I think it will be once they show it off, but a lot of people are like, I wouldn't be really excited about Demon's Souls. I'm an absolutely huge Dark Souls fan. Dark Souls is one of my favorite game series of all time. I played Bloodborne. I was late to it, but I absolutely loved Bloodborne. And so I would be very excited, through the roof excited, like I said, for a Demon Souls remake. And I really, really, really hope, that it is a launch title with the PlayStation 5, because when I buy my PS5 and whatever game I go to boot up first, I want it to be something that feels kind of, like, if it's not there, it's not there, right? But I want it to feel like when I pick up my PlayStation 5 and I play it for the first time, if Demon Souls Remake is the first game I ever play on my PS5, that's going to be special to me, because I absolutely love From Software's games. I didn't get to play Sekiro yet, which I feel terrible for not doing that. I have to at some point. I just haven't had the time. There's other games I'm trying to play. But my love for Dark Souls, I mean, I literally have like a massive framed Dark Souls poster. That's how much I love Dark Souls. It's one of my favorite games of all time. And to think that Demon Souls was the originator and the original game, I will be there day one. I don't care if it's launched or not, launched with the PS5 or not. I will be there day one, and I can't wait to, I just can't wait to experience that. So it'll be something special for sure. As you can tell, I'm like, once that game's officially announced, I'm going to be doing heavy coverage on that game. And I'm going to try to do my best on the channel to cover every big PlayStation 5 game that gets announced. But, yeah, between that and hearing of a new horror IP, I mean, I think Sony doing a new horror IP makes a lot of sense, because they definitely had to have seen the potential that was there with PT, but we saw what happened with PT. And so I think that they look at their lineup and they realize a lot of their games, they are diverse, but they do have a pretty straight through line where, yeah, they're like third person, open world, story driven, and we all love that, and they're not going anywhere. But we, talk about growth. Sony wants to grow their studios. They want to grow to the point where like they want to diversify more. I think having a genuine horror game, first party horror game, would go a very long way, and I think people would be very excited for that. So I wanted to mention that here briefly on the podcast, because I feel that it's something that would generate a lot of excitement, and people would love to see that. So we have one other topic we're going to be discussing before we end it here, and this is going to be maybe the most interesting topic for some people. Honestly, I don't think I can go much longer, because my throat's getting a little bit hoarse. I dropped the ball here. I didn't bring my coffee or my drink, so for this is, you can tell I'm new at podcasting. But looking at the chat here, is February 5th confirmed, and also when is the face reveal? February 5th is not confirmed. And face reveal, maybe 100K. I've said it enough times that when I hit 100K subscribers, I'm clearly going to have to do something. Let's see. Am I looking forward to PSVR 2 on PS5? Yes, I am. I'm waiting for that specifically. They say PS5 is a 10% GPU advantage. See, I'm only mentioning this, that you mentioned this comment, because we're going to talk about that next. Do I see it going to 20% advantage? We'll see. Eddie Lopez, gotta go. More podcasts soon. By the way, get water. Yeah, I'm going to have to. And yeah, like I said, I hope to make this podcast thing a weekly thing. I want to lock in a time. It'll probably be on Sundays, though. But I appreciate you showing up, and hopefully I'll see you next week when we do another one. Hydrate, yes. 800 viewers, crazy. You're killing it, man. Keep up the good work. Thanks. Yeah, and I appreciate everybody who shows up. I mean, this is a big deal for me. This is a big step. A podcast is a big deal, and, there's a lot of things we could do and a lot of different ways we could grow this going forward. So I appreciate everybody who, stopped by to tune in, if you've been here the whole time or if you're just showing up. And again, hit the like button. This is the first podcast, so it's absolutely essential that people give me feedback on this and let me know whether they like it, what they don't like. Any constructive criticism is helpful. Before you go, why do you think more devs are working on games on PS5? So I want to talk about this for a second, just because we mentioned it yesterday. I think it's simply just because PlayStation has proven they sell a lot of consoles. And to simplify it, developers like putting games on consoles that sell a lot of units, because there's a much higher chance they're going to sell a lot of games and in turn make a lot of money. That's why. So, and if you think about, that's exactly why Microsoft put everything on PC, because they can't lose that. Like, sure, you're losing market share in the console space, but let's put our games on PC. Suddenly it's more enticing to developers. Like, look, we're more open now. So if you put it on Xbox, if you partner with us and do an exclusive game, we're also going to put it on PC, whatever. That's how these things work. Mark says, I don't usually listen to a podcast, but if it's you, I'm down for it. Well, thanks. I really appreciate that. But getting to the final topic here, and potentially the most interesting, PlayStation 5 being more powerful than the Xbox Series X, and apparently the SSD being significantly more powerful, or faster, I should say, more capable than the SSD that is in the Xbox Series. Now, we talked yesterday, I believe, I don't know if it was yesterday, maybe the day before, but yeah, I think it was the day before, a new leak that has come out from an individual named Tommy Fisher, who is basically saying, look, I know this stuff, and I have to be, and he was trying to get verified on NeoGAF and Reset Era, and unfortunately, I don't think he was able to get verified on either because he wasn't able to provide sufficient enough evidence, and so that does definitely raise some serious question marks and skepticism. Well, we always have to be skeptical, but it seems to me like this person may know what he's talking about. And I say this only because you have to always pay attention to the idea of where there's smoke, there's fire. And the truth is this. For a longer period of time where the smoke has, resided, is with the notion that the PS5 is actually more capable than the Xbox Series X. Granted, not by much. So you say, Mustafa, you say Tommy Fisher, Klee Game Fan, who are verified on Reset Era, were both saying the PS5 is stronger. Yeah, so this is what I mean. There are people, not just these individuals who are, on forums who have some type of credibility. To what length, I can't really speak to that, but some type. Between them and between people like Jason Schreier, as well as others who subtly hint that the PS5 is indeed more capable, more powerful. But the big emphasis is this, not by much. And so it makes me think this is why we look at this recent report that has come out, where the SSD, apparently the SSD that's going to be in the Xbox Series X is only half the speed of the SSD that's going to be inside the PS5. And I think we know that one of the biggest factors for next generation is going to be overall speed and what developers are going to be able to do with the SSDs. The SSD is going to play a massive role in differentiating what we see now with current generation consoles versus what we're going to get with next generation. And I see some people say that, well, Phil Spencer confirmed that they are doing a custom SSD, and I believe people were saying that apparently Microsoft is going to be implementing their SSD in such a way that it's going to give them some type of boost, but it will be a traditional SSD. Listen, I can't jump to any conclusions because I don't know, right? Like, I don't have inside information. I don't know the real details. All I will say is that we have to think back to Sony. I believe it was the CEO of Sony. I forget his name. Kenichiro Yoshida. I think that's his name. And I'm pretty sure it was him during an earnings call. I believe in early 2019, mid 2019, whenever. And they talked about the PS5. And he emphasized that the PS5 is going to be a niche product. And saying that it's going to be for people who want the latest and greatest. And I think about this, and I think about all of the rumors, all of the rumblings about the PlayStation 5 being more so than the Xbox Series. And I could see this being a reality. Now, people always think it's a fanboy thing, and they're like, oh, you care too much about power, but I've said it time and time again. I do care about power. I've never said I don't care about power in regards to upgrading to a next generation console. The last time I checked, anybody who's planning to go out there, spend $400 or $500 on a new console, you're doing it for the upgrade. And when you're paying that amount of money, and it's been many years since you've upgraded to a console, you expect to see a massive leap forward. And so, yeah, in that sense, I do very much care about power. I want to see the PlayStation 5 be the most powerful machine it possibly can be. I also am aware that Sony is very price conscious, where they need to make sure they don't make it more than $500. And we also know how appealing the $400 price can be for companies like Sony. But if I had to put my money on it, I think I subscribe to this rumor. Maybe it's because I want to, and I'll admit that. It's because I want to. I want to subscribe to the notion that the PS5 it's not necessarily that it matters that it's more powerful than the Xbox Series, because that doesn't matter to me, okay? I want to subscribe to the notion that they're going to be neck and neck, that for as amazing and powerful as the Series X is apparently going to be, I don't want to find out that the PS5 is maybe significantly less than that, and of course the price would reflect that. I want to know that it's on par or on the same level or very close or just as powerful as it can be. That's what I care about, simply because I just feel like I'm willing to pay $500, and so I want a $500 console. However, I also am very understanding if this is not what happens. If Sony does go for that $400 price point, I understand that, and that's not a bad move on their part. You know, we have to understand they want to move units, they want to sell consoles, they want to move people over to the PS5 as fast as they possibly can. In fact, faster than they ever have before. The only way they're going to do that, listen, you gotta, you have to appeal to your audience. And in this case, based off of what Sony has said, based off of everything Mark Cerny has said, based off of what Jim Ryan has said, it sounds to me like their audience that they're striving for is a very hardcore market, the one that's going to go, the people that are going to go out there and buy a powerful console, people that are going to spend $500 on a console. And so thinking about this SSD speed, I will tell you this. Something this Tommy Fisher individual mentioned in this leak is that the biggest differentiating factor between the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X is going to be in the SSD. And it does line up with this report that we went over. People think that me talking about the SSD report, they think it's a leak. I mean, we can't really call it a leak, but it's somebody who did a little bit of research that discovered that Phison is the manufacturer that is apparently supplying Microsoft with their SSDs. Now, that doesn't mean that they can't do a custom SSD for them, and that doesn't mean that may not have changed, because he did emphasize in his report that it is only for the prototypes, apparently. But we are at a point where we don't really know, right? We don't know if these types of things can change. I've seen some people say that the SSD can change at the last moment. I don't know about that. I don't know enough to be able to say for sure. But all I know is that I am extremely excited to learn more about the PS5, and I am subscribing to the notion that the PS5 is going to be a $500 extremely powerful console that's going to be right up there with the Xbox Series X. Maybe that's just wishful thinking on my part, but when you look around, it seems like that is very likely to be possible. So those are pretty much all the topics I have, guys. And to kind of finish off the podcast, I'm going to spend maybe another 5 minutes, 10 minutes interacting with the chat here. And again, hit the like button. Really helps it out. But you're dreaming if you think Knack was successful. I don't think that's to me. I think that's to somebody else. Yes, $500 is a reasonable price. I agree. Umar says, what do you think about Sony censorship? I don't agree with it, but there's been a lot of shakeup within Sony in the past year, so I don't know if they still have that same stance they had earlier in 2019 or 2018 with censorship, but I don't agree with it. I only agree with it to a certain extent. I'm not going to lie to you, a lot of the stuff that they're censoring, I don't really care about, but I think in general, I don't really agree with censorship. I think you just got to let the artist depict what they want to depict. I think there's just fine lines in the sand where there's just some lines you don't cross. Okay, not saying you can't cross them, just saying you can't expect Sony to be willing to cross those lines. But however, there's a lot of stuff where it's I don't. Do you really have to censor this? At the same time, I kind of don't care but generally, I'm against censorship. Let me see what some of you are saying here. Paid $600 for the PS3, so I don't mind if the PS5 is $600 or $700. Yeah, but you have to understand the general market is not of that mindset. So it will not be $600. I can promise you that. You missed the show. You missed the podcast. Yeah, it will be posted. It will be on my channel once we end this. Plague Tale Innocence. Plague's Tale Innocence. I haven't played that yet. I've heard really good things about it. Go on the Weapon Wheel podcast? Probably not. I'm probably just going to do my own, if I'm being honest. I just like to have that type of control. Xbox is not even up for consideration. It's a B-level system. PS5 is AAA. and all that is needed and desired. Well, believe it or not, I think a lot of people do have that mindset as well. You're not the only one. I do think Microsoft has the potential, for sure, to do more. But we have to see. Like, if they're going to prove to anybody that they're going to really go in hard and do more, they're going to have to do it at E3 this year. E3 is, I can't stress enough how critical it is. Foxy Games, say great watch. Appreciate you showing up, man. I'm glad you enjoyed it. That goes for everybody who tuned in. Great channel. Keep up the work. I will do my best. Have I seen the leak of the PS5 startup? Yeah, we talked about that earlier. I don't think you were here for that, but I think it's confirmed it's fake. And even if it's not confirmed it's fake, it doesn't look real to me, if I'm being honest. But I'm pretty sure it's been confirmed fake. The same E3 that Sony won't attend. Yes. So that's another reason why Microsoft has to capitalize on that. They're going to have the spotlight, so we believe, all to themselves. That's not to say Sony won't do their own thing. Any news about the rumored Crash Bandicoot game? No, I haven't heard anything. I know as much as you guys know. Do I think Microsoft bought Techland? I do think they bought Techland. I would believe that, yeah. I don't want to say I'm 100% confident, but I mean, a game like Dying Light 2 that was striving for a spring release date and we're so close to it just getting delayed indefinitely, something's up. It doesn't necessarily mean it's for sure that's because Sony bought them, or Microsoft bought them, but it would make a lot of sense. We know that Microsoft apparently was shopping around for a studio in Poland, a Polish studio, and we know that Techland is Polish. So, yeah. Would you review an indie game if the developer pays for it? Maybe. I don't know. I mean, I get a lot of different offers, and I don't really take a lot of them, mainly like advertising stuff. However, I have been offered, I think, a few times before to try out like some indie games, but I feel like bad because it's like I get it's hard for them, but I'm not. I got to be true to myself and just play the games I'm most interested in. If I'm being honest, I would love to get review copies for Sony games. That would be great. I feel like my audience would certainly appreciate that, but, I don't know what Sony's stance is on that. And so hopefully in the future we could get something like that to happen, but the initiative only has like 60 employees now. What? Quadruple A? I don't know. I don't know how many employees they have. I just hope that whatever the initiative does is awesome. It sounds like they're breeding some great talent there. They're trying to reel in some great talent, so hopefully that means we get a great game. I just have no idea when to expect it. What do I think about Ninja Theory's Project Mara? I mean, I don't know. I don't know what to think of it. I don't know what it is. It sounds like it's a grounded version of Hellblade. I think it stars the same woman, but I'm interested in it for sure. I like Ninja Theory. I'm much more interested in Hellblade 2, obviously. Superman game rumors. Do you think it's all true? No, I do not. I think Jason Schreier actually confirmed that it's not true. Do I listen to Sacred Symbols? Yes, I do. I really enjoy Sacred Symbols. It's actually one of my main inspirations for wanting to do this podcast. Did I play Jedi Fallen Order? Actually, yeah. At the very beginning of the podcast, I confirmed that is the game I'm currently playing. Have I ever considered playing Switch games? I have played Switch games, and I do enjoy them. They're not really my cup of tea so much, but I have enjoyed some of them. Mainly Super Smash Bros. I enjoyed Mario Party, too. It's fun to play with friends. Venom and Spider-Man 2, PS5. Yeah. Who do I think is going to dominate next gen? I think it's more likely Sony will, but the word dominate, not so sure about that. We're going to have to see. It really depends on how hard Microsoft goes in to try to compete with Sony. But I think it's in Sony's favor for sure. But, all right, guys, that is going to do it for the first ever Press X to Live podcast. Before you guys leave, once again, last time I'm going to say it, please hit the like button. I would like this to get 1,000 likes if possible. It's the easiest way for you guys to tell me you enjoyed the podcast and you want me to continue doing this. And if I do continue doing this, which I plan to do right now, it will be on a weekly basis. Every Sunday, I cannot commit to a time yet. However, it will probably be anywhere between 10 and 12 a.m. Eastern time. But if the time ever changes, I will let you guys know ahead. So don't worry about that. And I appreciate everybody who showed up. And I know that a lot of you guys are saying I should get guests and I should have somebody else. Maybe in the future. I don't know. I'm still very much just testing the water with this. So I'm going to do whatever honestly feels most comfortable for me. That's how I've kind of always done this channel. But I also do want to keep an open mind. So we will see what happens in the future, maybe we can get some guests on. We'll have to see. I don't want to make any promises, but this podcast will live and die based off of you guys and your support, and hopefully we can grow it and it can be a big thing we do going forward. I will enjoy it, and I think many of you will enjoy it. And Crimson X25 just became a new member. Really appreciate that. It's a way for anybody who's wondering what it means to become a member. You join and you get the I put a little PlayStation logo next to your name, so anytime you message or comment on the channel, you get that. And it's just a way for anybody to directly support me and the content and what I do here. And I appreciate everybody who supports me, but I especially appreciate those of you who are supporting me directly and going above and beyond. It really means a lot. And so, yeah, I will catch you guys next week for the second episode of Press X to Lift podcast. But until then, take care.